Hello? Hello?
Good evening. Welcome to the Cortez City Council Special Meeting Workshop. Today is Tuesday, April 13th, 2021, and it's 5:48 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting, in person and virtual contact by Zoom. I call this meeting to order. We had an executive session earlier for the purpose of discussing a replacement for the city manager. We met with several people, the firm that represented the search group. I'll return to that executive session. This is the executive session that we had earlier. It concluded at 5:48 p.m. The executive session is concluded. Participants in this executive session were Rachel Medina, Arlena Yazzie, David Rainey, Amy Huckins, Robert Dobry, Orly Lucero, Matt Kashner, and Drew Gorgay. He's the representatives from the firm that was doing the search for our city manager. And we've narrowed it down to several individuals, which we will discuss later. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matter not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask that you state your concerns for the record.
Mr. Mayor, there isn't an issue. You just said that the executive session ended at 5:48. It ended at
What time was that?
4:48.
4:48. Okay. Seeing none, thank you. Now we will return to our city council special meeting. As I said before, we call this meeting to order, and the first item on the agenda is we will adjourn to an executive session number 2. So the meeting will be held in absence. We will pause it for about 60 minutes until we return to the city council chambers. Thank you for your patience.
Their executive session.
Oh,
So we're
gotcha.
switching.
Are you guys going for the water? Mike?
Yeah.
He's not here. That's.
Hold on, I got him on the phone right now. Scott. Okay, can you come over to city
Good evening. The time is now 6:32 PM and the executive section has been concluded. Participants in this executive session were Rachel Medina, Arlena Yazzie, David Rainey, Amy Huckins, Scott Dobry, Orly Lucero, Mike Green, and Scott Crowe. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss water rights. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask that you state your concerns for the record. Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is discussion on Empire Electric rates for solar projects. Director of General Services Rick Smith and City Manager John Doherty.
Good evening, City Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Rick, let me go ahead and start it, and then I'll turn it over to you. The reason this is on here is because when the county put in their solar charging stations, they were informed by Empire Electric that they were going to be charged to make up for the solar that they're generating. Empire was changing their rates. And so I asked Rick to go and investigate this because we got all kinds of solar projects. And so.
Can I interrupt you a second, John? Can I interrupt you a second?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, I'm going to abstain from this. I won't be on that, so I'll let you guys discuss it.
You're recusing yourself, Orly? Okay.
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, I'll turn it over to Rick.
Good evening, City Council. I just kind of wanted to provide a little bit of background. The city actually has 2 solar systems on the City Hall. We have a 14 kilowatt system that was put in during construction to meet the LEED criteria for the construction of the new City Hall. After that system was up, we saw how advantageous it was to the city, and we went for a full net metered system. So we added another 88 kW to the City Hall system. And the system has done very well, pretty much net metered. Of course, in the wintertime, you pay a little bit, but we make up for it in the good weather. Also, during that change, the bigger solar system, we petitioned Empire Electric to change our billing rate from large power user to what they're calling now general service 3-phase. And that was done to avoid demand charges at that time. All it was a billing change on the rates. That still has the same transformer and whatnot. So apparently Empire Electric is getting ready to implement some changes to the rate structure. And I read in the Empire Echoes magazine, I believe it's scheduled to go in effect this September. I've included a couple of sheets of package there. What it is, it would be putting a demand charge on the general service 3-phase piece, which on the second page, I ran what it would have cost the city this past 12 months. And you can see by taking that demand usage times the amount of the demand charge, the city would pay about another $2,500 a year for the solar system versus completely net metered. the last section I have included in there, this was brought to our attention by the county commissioners on their solar system. And I've included a letter that they have sent to the Empire Electric Board. And I didn't know if city council would want to consider a similar type letter to the Empire Board requesting to be grandfathered or come up with a different all energy rate. Primarily this affects the city hall solar system, the golf maintenance and kennel systems are smaller and wouldn't have that much impact. Any questions or thoughts?
I don't see any questions. Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, do we want, yeah, do we need to do any direction here?
Yeah.
Do we want
Don,
to see the letter?
do you have any direction for us?
It's not on here as an action item, so it was more information for you guys.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is a February financial report update. Finance Director Kelly Kosky.
Good evening, council.
Good
Mayor,
evening.
can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. So I've included in the packet this evening the February 2021 financial statements. These are in a bit of a new format, and so I sent instructions along with this, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood the new format and that there weren't any questions. I know Ms. Yazzie had a question earlier. Were you able to get that question answered, ma'am?
Yes, John was able to get that answer for me. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, excellent. So just a brief review, and I will keep this brief for you. Because these are the February financial statements, the first column is going to be your period actual. So that'll actually be the February numbers. The year-to-date actual in the next column is going to be the January and the February numbers combined. The budget is the annual budget for the entire year. The next column, which is marked as unearned, that's the amount of our budget that is left to spend within the year. And then the column at the very end, that percentage, is the percentage of the budget that we've burned through so far this year. At the bottom of the page, you'll notice that it tells you 16% of the fiscal year has elapsed. So that'll give you a good double check to see if we're on track, if we're under where we should be for the year, or if we're over. One of the other things that I really like about this format is it does break it down into revenues and expenses, and then it further breaks it down by departments. So at the very top of each page, you'll notice it'll either say revenues, like it does on the first page, or it will say expenditures, like it does on page 5, for example. So, does anybody have any questions?
None so far.
Okay, that was my brief explanation, and if there aren't any questions, I appreciate your time this evening, council and esteemed mayor.
Kelly, this is Medina. Can you give us an update on the audits?
Sure. So the new audit firm that we've hired, Atlas, they are planning to be in our office sometime in the month of May. We had Lorraine Trotter from Professional Consultant Services come out last week. She was here Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We were able to work on the 2017 trial balance, which is really the jumping off point for that 2017 audit. We weren't able to complete it all in those 3 days, but made great headway on it. So We're hoping to have Atlas in our offices in May. That's when they'll actually go through and start their testing, where they do random testing of all of the payroll module, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and that is probably going to take a pretty large chunk of their time since 2017, we know we are still in that high audit risk category.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kelly. We appreciate that.
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a presentation of the band shell proposal. Bob Wagner, are you on board?
I'm here, Mike.
Good evening, Bob. Welcome to the Cortez City Council, and you've been a main pusher for enthusiasts for this band shell program, and I'd like to hear what your proposal is tonight.
Yeah, that's what we want to do. I want to thank everybody for your time and for this opportunity. It's been almost exactly a year since the topic of the band shell has come before the council. And if I'm not mistaken, when we came to a workshop session last year, it may have been the very last in-person sit around the big table in the conference room session before the COVID clampdown hit. So that's just about a year ago. Because of all the COVID precautions, things have moved pretty slowly on the band shell project over these last 12 months. One thing that's happened is we have officially become the Friends of the Band Shell, and we have allied ourselves with the Onward Foundation here in Cortez. We did that for a couple reasons. First of all, when it comes time to raise money, we can do that as a nonprofit organization under Onward's umbrella without actually having to become a 501c3 on our own. And the other thing is there are people on the staff at Onward who know lots about fundraising and philanthropic organizations and who likes to fund what kinds of things. And they will be very helpful to us when it comes time to raise money. Obviously, before we start fundraising, though, we have to have a specific proposal of what the structure is going to be like, what it will look like, how it will work, and what it will cost. And in order for that to happen, we needed an architect. Well, as luck would have it, we got a grant from the David Fraley and Christine Nunn Family Fund to hire an architect. And the person we found with great good fortune is Jim Keogh. Jim Keogh is very talented and very experienced. And on top of that, he really likes working with community projects. So Jim has put together a description of the band shell project so far, and it's included in your packet. If you can find that, Jim is going to walk you through that material, and then we'll have time left to answer whatever questions may arise. So are you there, Jim?
Yes, I am present.
All right, take it away.
May I share the screen? Share my presentation. So thank you, Bob, for the introduction. I've done public work throughout Colorado, Utah, and the Midwest for 25 years. I'm honored to be working with Friends of the Band Shell, Bob and his team. And I have assembled a team that you'll see at the end of the slideshow. Briefly, we have been working on site location and some design elements of the stage. And I guess the first thing I would like to remind everyone is the band shell is a very different structure than a bandstand, in that the band shell, this is on the right, is the Nuremberg band shell in Central Park, which is finely acoustically tuned for symphony, acoustic, and as well as amplified music. And you can see a diagram of a band shell that was designed in England recently for optimizing acoustics. So there is a large difference between the two, and we are pursuing a band shell with its acoustic integrity. One other thing I would like to mention is a recent Gallup poll found that social offerings, which include availability of arts and culture opportunities, ranked #1 in determining residents' attachment to their community. And I think, given this venue and the power behind and the emphasis behind the Friends of the Band Shell, this is a very important function and activity and structure for the community. You will see here, I won't go through in detail, but band shell activities, we created a program based on the number of interested groups that are committed and likely and potentially possible for the band shell itself and its venue, and for the public. The San Juan Symphony, the Civic Winds, Southwest Civic Winds are of the larger components that we are fitting into the structure as we design it. And those are both acoustic in nature. So it's important that this shall be acoustically designed for the enjoyment within its park setting. We went through a number of site locations with the analysis criteria of parking, nearby restrooms, potential nearby playgrounds, vehicle access for performers, and then a shady area for up to 500 people is the largest audience that we are planning for, and that's on the larger size. Jumping right into those, we took a very objective look at 3 locations. Starting out with Park de Vida, this has a great level of services, but from parking to restrooms and being close to the rec center. The biggest challenges were the orientation of this band shell that would be in this area with the audience facing essentially west. All these are with north straight up. So the setting sun would really have a challenging aspect to the audience viewing in the later afternoons and evening. There is also something I didn't mention here, but there would be a reverberation because there is a building adjacent in the projection of to the audience of the audio. So there would be a reverberation and a springing back of sound in this venue. So moving on to the Veterans Park location. Again, it has a number of great facilities that would be accompanying the band shell, the welcome center, the municipal pool, restrooms, vendor access, and etc. But again, we have an issue with the proximity, not of the sun. This is in the right orientation. This is the actual orientation that's preferred up to the northeast for the band to be projecting. But the problem here is noise from Highway 160 and from the pool and from the busier streets surrounding this area would be a challenge. And we understand that, especially given the emphasis of the acoustic nature of acoustic string bands, the Southwest Civic Winds, and obviously the San Juan Symphony. So moving on to the last, and it was actually one of the first that we looked at, but the Centennial Park location adjacent to the library, and you can see there's a library addition that has been shown here in diagram form. The proposal of the site has been modified from its original location. So we've moved the band shell closer and taking advantage, not taking down trees, but actually taking advantage of the shade trees that exist and maneuvering this and jacking it around so that it falls in a place where it is situated where there's optimum shade. There's no, as this projects out, there's no structures back here to reverberate back into the audience from the behind. The largest challenge we see, which is not something that can't be overcome with structural and acoustic design, is containing the sound and projecting it, and that's exactly what we want to do, into the audience, and not having a lot of sound leak, and being very conscious of the neighborhood to the west. So that is the one challenge this site has, and it's a challenge that is design in nature. It doesn't involve the site, it involves the structure, hardening the back of the structure so that there's a very solid projection outward. Again, vendor hookups, the facility, the restrooms, and then over here off the picture is a play area, similar to some of the other sites. Moving on here, so we have time for questions. We have a number of appendix. One is the resolution from last year in April. Appendix B, I'm just going to really briefly show you a number of band shells that have been acoustically tuned. Boulder, it's now preserved, and that's downtown in the park. The Red Wing band shell has been acoustically designed. It actually has a glass back that, you know, allows people to see through the park, and you can see people under shade trees here. And again, another one in Minnesota that really harks and was probably generated from inspiration from the Central Park band shell. And then again here in the band shell in New York on Long Island, John Philip Sousa band shell. Again, you can see people amongst the trees and how this thing settles within the existing nature. And then the Lucius Woods band shell that Bob is very, very fond of and talks very highly of. It was very acoustically generated design. So yes, and then furthermore, just some, you can read these at your own pace, but a series of 6 various letters of interest from groups that would be highly excited to play within the Cortez and larger region and drawing from the region. I think this is a regional, obviously with the San Juan Symphony, this could be thought of as a regional location to hear music. Lastly, when Bob reached out to me, I have pulled a team together, an acoustic design consultant from California, David Conant, Walker Christensen, recommended by Dean Holmquist as the landscape design, had a lot of experience here with Goff Engineering and the structural design with Bill Hickam out of Durango. And lastly, Rose Steele, understanding that there is a scope of performance, theater performance, that we want to integrate into the stage and allow the stage to have an array of attraction for scopes and entertainment, not just music, but we want this thing to be a very versatile addition to the public venues of Cortez. So thank you. I hope I was brief enough to leave time here for the question and answers. And I thank you for your attention. And I'll just end here on the opening slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciate your, thank you, Jim. We appreciate your presentation. Are there any questions from the council? So I have one question, Jim. Are there any obstacles keeping the band shell from moving forward at this point?
No, I believe that as long as we are all under the impression that the best site, the needle is moving towards Centennial. If we have a go-ahead from the city and from yourselves for that location, we've got a lot of groundwork behind us and we could move forward rather quickly. No obstacles.
And this does account for the expansion of the library in the future?
Yes, and one thing I would like to say is that there is an addition of some parking here that I haven't incorporated, and that would probably be the first and foremost, that before we finalize the precise location, that I gain all the information that has been done for the public library. I work with Dean and the other town staff involved with that project, and that we have a very good comfort level with the position of the stage as it relates to these other future additions to the park. We see that there is a comfortable balance here, and there is having a music venue near a public library. I think is very compatible items to be sitting acquainted with each other within the park.
Okay. Orly, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. I was just wondering, this probably has to go through planning, correct?
Yes, that is another thing that we need to do as we get into gear here, is reaching out to Tracy Hughes and getting all the information so that during the process of fundraising, we have a comfortable level of communication and coordination with the town and its process. And during, the fundraising is going to be an effort that takes some time. So we feel comfortable that we can weave in our public processes and planning and zoning processes within that time frame.
You don't have a ballpark cost, approximately how much something like this would run, do you?
I don't. If you want something really off the cuff.
No, I'm just curious, see how much it would be, and for all those designs you're showing and everything. I'm just curious.
I am very acquainted with the public processes and public budgets. And I think one thing that we will do early on, I think this stage is, it could be as low as 800,000, but it could be upwards of within the, 1 to 2 frame for the structure itself. I believe that we have the interest and momentum and communication already, who once we finish the design is, before we go to fundraising, is to go to a local contractor and get the costs vetted out from the construction professionals themselves. And I'm very acquainted with that process. And we want to do that before fundraising actually gets launched. So it is, along with planning and zoning and, you know, the approvals, is that piece for understanding the costs. And I failed to show it, but I do have a pretty drawn out schedule, linear Gantt schedule for this project that includes a lot of the items that you're asking about.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. I was just curious.
Yes,
Thanks.
Thank you. Good question.
Mayor, I have a couple of questions, and I'm having trouble hearing. Some of the words are kind of garbled on some of the presentations. It's my understanding this still would have to go through a planning and zoning process. It is also, I'm understanding it has to go through a building permit review to make sure that the structure follows whatever codes are applicable, electrical, plumbing, building, whatever. And so it's not your intent to approve this site and override those if that's what you choose to do. It's just what I'm trying to make sure we all understand, that there's certain processes that would have to happen. So if you do approve this as the site, you would have to approve it contingent upon it meeting other requirements. So there's no misunderstanding. Because all I hear is, can we build it here, but I don't hear about the other processes that we're supposed to follow.
Has there been conversation with Tracy at all? With between your group?
Yes, can you hear me? It is not our intention to skirt around any of the processes. I believe as a public facility, even more so, we need to go through the process with the planning and zoning and build a sturdy set of documents and have it fully permitted through the city of Cortez. Hello?
Did you hear the question, Jim?
Yes, did you hear my answer?
No, your screen froze for a second. Could you repeat
Okay.
the answer, please?
It is not our intention at all, given a public facility, that we would try to avoid any of the processes needed from a planning and zoning and from a life safety, which is the permitting process with electrical and structural. My team is very acquainted with all the necessary documentation and coordination efforts, and it's my charge to lead that effort with Tracy and the team in the city once we have a go-ahead for this location. And really no stone unturned. You know, I've been doing public work for a long time, and it's very important to keep the constituents and the public very aware of the processes and of the nature of our design. And I would guess that the team would be providing some opportunity for public open house as well, because it's important that this has full backing from the council and the city overall, and they understand the nuances of the design and all the benefits of the structure. So if this is the chosen site, I will, open up conversations again with Tracy and with Dean and the other folks in the town that I've been coordinating early on with.
So to be clear, Mr. Green, we would need to make the vote verbal, the vote to be contingent on not impeding on the proposed future extension of the library?
If that's a contingency you wanted, my recommendation.
Is your mic on?
Oh, sorry. My recommendation would make it contingent upon passing planning and zoning and building codes approval. To lock up the location is something that might not work there. I haven't heard what Tracy's thoughts are exactly on the parking, on the different things that go into that. I haven't heard exactly, there was questions raised, what if, how many trees were gonna be lost, some things like that. So there's a lot of contingencies. I'd almost like to see Tracy's process go through before the location was approved. In other words, if she comes up with reasons that it might work 50 feet in a different direction or not at all, I think we need to know that before we approve it. I'm sorry to babble, but I'm thinking we want to treat this like we treat anybody else that's coming in to build something. They've got to show us the whole application process, everything, so that we know what belongs there. There may be other reasons in the land use code. I can't quote it like she can. There may be some other reasons that it shouldn't be there. I don't know. I'm not saying anything against the ban shell. I just want to make sure we don't cause ourselves issues down the road by shortcutting the process and then hearing about it later when we make somebody else follow the process. That's all I'm trying to get to.
Mayor,
Yes,
I have a comment because I haven't gotten an earful from Tracy. I strongly recommend that you don't make any motions tonight because Tracy has a lot of issues, starting with parking. We have to change our land use code in order to allow them to share parking with the library. That's the first issue. The second issue, and I've already brought up to Bob, is the neighbors. Nobody's talking to the neighbors. You can't just blow them off and say, well, it's just gonna happen and we'll deal with it because we have never dealt with anybody else like that. And so I caution you to follow precedent the council has followed in the past and not go changing things just because we want to rush this through. There are concerns about the parking and the neighbors, and I believe Sonia was going to talk to the church, and it's more than just talking to the church. We need legal documents with them that we could use that and how the patrons are going to get from that church parking lot over to Van Shell. And you know, nobody wants to talk about conflict, but this is going to be a major jewel for Cortez. There's going to be a lot of people wanting to use it. So if the library doesn't close till 2 or 4 in the afternoon, and then the Methodist Church has services Sunday mornings and a funeral or a wedding, you know, there's just a lot of things that are going to need to be worked out. And I think this is putting the cart before the horse, asking council to give a blessing to this concept without Tracy being in here to go through her whole list of things that need to be discussed and worked out before we do anywhere. That's it. Thank you.
thank you, John. Yeah, there are some more issues that need to be addressed, you know, parking and the neighborhood acceptance of this fan show. We're basically listening to the proposal from Jim and Bob about the proposed site of the fan show. It's not approved or not, it's just an idea that's being presented to us, and we're taking all the information we can, and we'll get more input from Tracy and the planning and zoning before any decisions are made. Thank you, John.
And this is Councilman Dobry. I think there's a couple other issues too that we need to address. I think we have to look at not just the future 3 years, 5 years of what we want to do with the library, but the long-term future of the library. That maybe we need further expansion out that way. And the other thing is that this site would be another amenity on the north side of town while we still have a park on the south side that we haven't built out and haven't done. And I just have some concerns about that, about kind of the equity of continuing to build new and interesting things on one side of town while not building a park that was promised on the south side.
There was something, I've been listening to people talk today a lot, so excuse me, but something the mayor said that was a little bit legally troubling for me is you folks would get information from planning and make a decision. My recommendation is you put this through the process, just like anybody else. They come in and fill out the forms for Tracy for planning. They come in and get their plans reviewed by Sean Canada. They don't get to short circuit anything and come in and you folks say, oh yeah, this is what we want to do. I think they need to, my recommendation is let's be legal with this. Let's follow the legal process of our land use code, our building codes, everything, and let's get it started. It's going to take a while. There's going to be some meetings, and it's only going to help them in some ways make this a better project because it will start to have input from all the players instead of just council and them. And Tracy then and staff has time to really look at things. And maybe we can make this better by slowing it down and putting it through the normal process. It could help these folks.
I also have a concern about the long-term costs. So is this Friends of the Band Shell, is this gonna be an ongoing group? Or is it just for the construction of this? Who's gonna pay the electricity? Who's gonna maintain it? It's gonna cost us in patrolling it. So there's gonna be some long-term costs, and I think that needs to be transparent on whether the city's gonna eventually take that on and whether we can afford that, or if you're gonna have a surviving nonprofit.
This is Bob, if you can hear me.
Yes.
The Friends of the Band Shell will continue at least in the form of contracting annually with the summer musicians. We're planning on weekly concerts featuring local musical talent, and the Friends of the Band Shell group will persist in the form of soliciting and contracting with the musicians for the summer series. Beyond that, we don't have any thought about how the maintenance is going to be covered. I guess the plan all along was once the building was completed, we would give it to the city and the city would maintain it like it does all of the other buildings that the city owns. That's as far as we've thought about that.
I would ask Worley and Mayor Mike, because my memories, I'm getting old. I understood this was going to be totally built, paid for, run, maintained, operated by the entity that was going to use it. The city parks department, yes, it's going to have some cleanup things and whatever in the park, emptying trash cans. But the facility itself was going to be no cost to the city of any kind. And Worley and Mayor Mike can go look at the minutes and see if that was said. But that was my understanding. This was both a turnkey and no cost to the city operation. Almost like we were going to let them manage it and run it on city ground. There was no money coming out of the city for it.
Thank
I
you.
can be corrected.
Yeah, we'd have to look at the minutes on that, on the maintenance of it. But the funding for the band shell would come from donations from groups to build it. We'd have to determine how much the city will be involved in maintaining this. And I wanted to clear up too that, it's not just the planning department that would clear it and then the council would approve it. We'd have to go through the full vetting process just to be completely, do a complete look into this construction of the band shell. Thank you. Worley, did you have any comments about the band shell? Any more? Okay. Council, any other questions, comments?
I don't have any.
Okay. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Bob. Appreciate your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any general council discussion tonight? John Doherty, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I have this under my city manager report, but since we've got a few minutes, I would request at the next council meeting that the clerk put on the agenda to discuss on the 16th of this month, the COVID dial will be disappearing from the state. And it's my understanding that the mask mandate will stay in place until May. But at that point, it's kind of anybody's guess what's going to happen. So I think at the next meeting, council needs to discuss what this means for us. Are we going to open up, do away with masks in the building? Once this COVID thing or the dial goes away, we don't have any way of knowing where we stand anymore. So that was one of my questions. The other question was, do you want me to try and get Dr. Aiken so you can talk to him again about, if we don't have any guidance on what are we supposed to be doing?
And I suppose we could also ask you folks if you want to talk about the emergency. Do we continue it or do we get rid of it and the consequences of doing that? Potential consequences.
That's something we'll have to discuss.
Is there a plan for the state to lift the emergency?
I have to do some research and find out exactly what it is. Some of the counties have already lifted the local emergencies, some of the other governments, so it would be just our state of emergency. And at least start the discussion. So we could think about what it might mean.
Can we include as part of that the financial, the way that could affect the finances of the city? Because I know a lot of times if we're not in an emergency, it can limit how you can access federal and state financial assistance.
That's what I want to double check. That's my only real concern about it. I mean, other things would be there'd be no more Zoom meetings. You can go back to business like it used to be a year and a half ago. And so there's a few little things that would happen. And so I just want, we should discuss it.
I'd say yes, invite Dr. Aiken then.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Okay, if there's no other discussion, we'll adjourn this workshop special meeting. We'll reconvene at 7:30 for the regular session. Meeting's adjourned. Good evening. Welcome to the Cortez City Council. This is our regular meeting. Today is Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. It's 7:30 p.m. This meeting is in hybrid, in-person, and virtual contact through Zoom. If you would stand up and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United